Hi, my name's Gina. I've come on here tonight to tell you about the night I saw Elvis in concert. November the 28th, 1976. First of all, some background. Those of you who've seen my previous video on my channel about the concert will know some of this, but for those of you who haven't, might like to know the background. I was married to my first husband in the 1970s. He was the president of the Elvis Presley fan club in Victoria, and we had pen pals all over the world. We were in contact with all the fan clubs, and life was pretty busy for us, Elvis was. Notice I said pen pals. In 1976, there was no internet, no email, no Facebook, no mobile phones, no digital cameras. Everything had to be done by letter or phone calls. So when Wayne in 1976 got a letter from his pen friend in San Francisco to say that Elvis was doing a concert there and she had spare tickets, would we like to come? Well, yeah, of course. So bearing in mind it probably took a week for a letter to get from San Francisco to Melbourne, and then when we got the letter we had to arrange time off work, rake up $2,000 for the airfare, write back to Hetty and say yes, we're coming. The letter from Melbourne to San Francisco would have taken another week. By the time Hetty got that letter, she thought we weren't coming. It was, nearly a month had passed. So she wrote back and said, look, I'm sorry, I didn't think you were coming, so I've sold the tickets to someone else. But don't worry, I can get tickets from scalpers, but they'll be expensive, $50 each. Well, when you've just paid $2,000 in airfares, $50 is neither here nor there. So by that time we were graduated from letters to phone calls, and Hetty arranged for her and her husband to meet us at the airport when we landed in San Francisco on Friday night, and took us back to their place for the weekend. Well, we had a wonderful time, non-stop Elvis. On Sunday night we drove to the Cow Palace. The Cow Palace in San Francisco holds around about 17,000 people. We didn't know where our seats were at that time. Let me explain, the arena is huge, it's huge, it's absolutely huge. I was going to get a photo on my iPad and I didn't get around to it. But the stage was kind of at one end of the arena and there were seats all around. At either side of the stage there was a ramp, well, kind of a ramp, a footpath from the entrance where the entertainers came up to go onto the stage. Our seats were front row, now not in the front row directly but on one side, but we were near the front. Not long before the concert started, we noticed Colonel Parker and Linda Thompson standing near us, and we thought, wow, gee, it'd be great to talk to them. Well, they happened to turn around and see our t-shirts, Elvis Presley Fan Club of Victoria, and they naturally asked, oh, where are you from? Australia? Wow, yes, we've come over here for the weekend to see Elvis. They just thought that was fantastic. Wayne talked to Colonel Parker and I talked to Linda, and she was just the loveliest, loveliest lady. And I didn't know until recently that later that night she and Elvis had an argument and they split up. But no, she was there and she was great. Before Elvis was due to come on the other side of the stage, the footpath leading up to the stage, somebody had rolled out a red carpet, and obviously people assumed that's where Elvis was going to come out. The lights went dim, the band was playing 2001, one single spotlight was roving over the arena, it shone on the red carpet, shone on the stage, and it shone to where we were sitting. Elvis walked out in front of us. I couldn't believe it. In retrospect, if I had any idea that he was going to come out there, I would have had my camera ready, but I didn't know. I got such a shock. He was this close. He was this close to us. He was so bloody handsome. Just blew us away. He was tall. We all know he was tall. 6 foot. Long legs, broad shoulders, and he walked, I always say he walked like a gunslinger. He sort of had that stance where his legs were slightly apart, and he walked with purpose and confidence. He knew where he was going and what he was going to do. Suntanned skin, and his eyes were like sapphires. They were so blue, dark bluey green. And of course the long, long eyelashes and the black hair. Oh God, he was gorgeous. He got up on the stage and he started singing. Oh, well, just before I want to say that, when he made the appearance, he started to walk out. Naturally, the fans started cheering, and he got up on the stage, and I tell you, it felt like all the air had been sucked out of the auditorium. You had 17,000 people there, sort of like that. You could feel the energy. Elvis is like I know it sounds blasphemous, but he was like a god standing there. Really, it was just unspeakable. Sorry, I get carried away. Anyway, he started off as CC Rider, and he sang, and I was sitting there. I had two cameras on my lap. I had a Super 8 movie camera, which I didn't use because the security guards saw it earlier. Signs up everywhere, no movie films allowed, and they ripped the film out of it. But I had my single lens reflex 35mm camera, and I got plenty of slides. I also had a pen and paper on my lap, and I wanted to write down all the songs that Elvis sang because I knew I'd never remember them all. So I was busy with the camera and writing pen, and so I've got to confess I can't remember, and 47 years have gone by now, everything about the concert, but certain songs I do remember. I remember my favourite C song. I remember when he sang Love Letters. I just love that song. And then when he sang Fever. Now, when he sang Fever, I'll tell you what, the screaming didn't stop. You know those steel microphone stands they had? Well, Elvis is singing Fever, and he's doing this like it's a woman and pressing it up against his body and twitching his hips. Oh, God. I'm sick. So God. And then he sang Hurt, which is beautifully, and America the Beautiful. I love that song. I mean, I'm Australian, but that song is just so patriotic. And Elvis introduced it by saying that this year was their bicentennial year, 1976, and he wanted to sing this song as a tribute to his country. And it was sung from the heart. And of course, it's now or never. Well, you could have heard a pin drop. And you wouldn't think that his voice could be any better than his records, but it was. Maybe it was because we were there and we could see him and hear the amplified voice all around us, but oh God, it was beautiful. He could have heard a pin drop, and he just sang that so beautifully. Oh, and he sang, I think there's 26 songs altogether, but not all of them were complete. Some of them were just a verse here and there, and some of them were medleys, but I noted down 26 different titles, so I was there. As I said, the stage was surrounded by people, the audience, and Elvis didn't just stand and face the audience in one direction. He walked over and he faced them, sang to them, and then he walked across and he sang to them, and then he stood and sang to the people behind him. And of course, every time he faced a different direction, the whole place lit up, the flashbulbs. No wonder the poor guy had glaucoma. Oh, when you think of the spotlights in his eyes and the flashbulbs. I mean, 5-10 years of that, you know, no wonder. Geez, your eyes can only take so much. But Elvis being Elvis, he loved his fans, and that's what he did. They wanted to see him, and he gave it all to them. So he was walking over toward us at one point, and I thought, I want a close-up photo of him. I want a close-up photo of his face looking at me. So I got one photo of him full length, which you can see on one of my other videos. And as he got closer, I stood up on my chair and I screamed, "Elvis, I love you!" And he heard me. He heard me. And he looked and grinned at me. Oh, God, that beautiful smile. And he said, "I love you too, honey." Oh, God. Oh, shit. Look, I mean, it's nothing different. He said that to all his fans. You know, when they called out, they constantly calling out they loved him. And he did love his fans. It showed in his presence, the way he was. He just exuded love. When every song he sang, he poured his heart and soul into it, and the fans knew it, and they projected love back to him. This was just love, just going back and forth the whole time. I can't say any more. I suppose my strongest memory is when he walked past us and he was so close and he was so good looking. He just so handsome. And better than his photos in the books, better than the photos of the movies. I'll put all my calendar photos up here today. Just looking at his beautiful face. No one do him justice. Oh, I just wish I'd lived. Oh, and I think less than a year later he was dead. Couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. He was so alive, so vibrant. How could he die at 42 years old, 42 years of age? No, it just wasn't right. I'm sort of glad he didn't live till he was 80 or even 70. But he could have lived another 20 years, I'm sure of it, if he'd looked after himself. If he looked after himself, he had everything going for him. And the other thing was he wasn't fat. And he was never fat. You look at his arms and legs. Elvis was not a fat person. The poor guy was ill. His face was bloated. He had a bloated stomach. But when we saw him, he looked fantastic. And I said to Linda Thompson's dad, I said, Elvis doesn't look fat. Where are they getting these photos? And she turned, she said, honey, she said, Elvis has just been, or not long been, home from a health resort at Palm Springs. And she said he's at top of condition right now. You're very lucky to be seeing him when you are now. And that's, I nearly forgot to mention the scarf. Yeah. When Elvis was throwing the scarves to the audience, Wayne said to me, are you going to go and get a scarf? And I said, you must be joking. Look at all those people, I'd get crushed. Linda heard me. She turned around, she said, honey, I'll get you a scarf. And she went up there and she got a scarf, came back and handed it to me. Isn't that lovely? I had that scarf for 20 years and then I sold it. Anyway, that's another story, and again, it's in one of my other videos. I hope I haven't made a fool of myself. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.